In a distant countryside where narrow dirt roads curved patiently between endless fields of wheat and the wind carried not just dust but stories, whispered from one home to another, there lived a man named Karim. A man whose presence alone brought a strange sense of relief, as if things would somehow be all right simply because he was nearby. He was not a leader, nor a scholar, nor a wealthy landowner, yet people trusted him instinctively. Because Karim had a rare habit in a busy world, he noticed suffering and refused to walk past it. He rose long before sunrise each morning, not driven by dreams of success or personal ambition, but by a quiet inner alarm that told him someone, somewhere, would soon need help. Some days it was an elderly woman struggling to carry water from the well, her hands trembling with age. Other days it was a farmer pacing the fields in panic over a missing animal. Sometimes it was a child awake in the night, afraid of shadows and storms, and sometimes it was a stranger burdened by grief so heavy that all they needed was a silent companion willing to listen without judgment. Karim gave freely his time, his strength, his food, his patience, never pausing to calculate the cost, never asking what he would receive in return, because helping others had become his identity, the one thing that made him feel useful and worthy in a world that often overlooked people like him. Over time, the village grew so accustomed to Karim's presence that they stopped seeing his effort altogether. His kindness became expected, like rain or daylight, always there, never questioned. No one noticed how thin he had become, how his shoulders curved slightly forward from years of carrying more than his share, how his hands sometimes shook when he tried to rest them, or how his eyes carried a permanent tiredness that sleep never fully erased. His laughter grew quieter, his pauses longer, yet people continued to bring him their problems, convinced he would always find a way to fix them. At the edge of the village stood Karim's own home, small and worn, a silent reflection of the care he never gave himself. Its roof leaked whenever the rains came, its walls bore deep cracks from years of neglect, and its floor remained cold and dusty, waiting for repairs. Karim promised himself he would make tomorrow, but tomorrow never came, because there was always another knock at the door, another urgent voice calling his name, another crisis that felt more important than his own comfort. Karim told himself this was what love looked like, that sacrifice was proof of goodness, and that ignoring his own pain was a noble price to pay for being useful, even as his body quietly began to rebel against the life he was forcing it to live. The breaking point arrived not with drama, but with exhaustion. One evening, after spending hours helping a stranger rescue an animal trapped deep in thick mud beyond the fields, Karim began the long walk home beneath a sky swollen with dark clouds. His breath came unevenly, his legs trembled beneath his weight, and a strange tightness wrapped around his chest, as if something inside him was slowly tearing. He tried to ignore it, as he always had, but before he could reach shelter, his strength vanished entirely. Karim collapsed at the threshold of his home, his body finally refusing to move another step, the night swallowing him in silence. For 2 long days he lay there weak and barely conscious, drifting between sleep and wakefulness, listening for footsteps that never came. In those quiet hours, memories returned uninvited, the faces of people he had helped, the hands he had held, the promises of gratitude spoken and forgotten. He wondered if anyone would notice his absence, if anyone would knock on his door the way he had knocked on theirs, but the village assumed Karim must be busy helping someone else, as he always was, and life continued without pause. It was a wandering elder who eventually found him, a traveler passing through who noticed the stillness where movement should have been. The elder offered water, shade, and time-simple gifts that felt immense in that moment. When Karim finally found the strength to speak, he confessed a truth he had never dared to say aloud, that he was exhausted beyond words, that he had given everything he had to give, and that despite being surrounded by people he felt deeply, painfully alone. The elder listened without interruption, without advice, without judgment, and then spoke slowly, as if choosing each word with care. He told Karim that compassion without balance becomes a quiet form of self-harm, that even the strongest bridge will collapse if it carries every burden alone, and that a flame meant to light the way for others must be protected or it will burn itself into darkness. Those words did not strike Karim like thunder. Instead, they settled into him gently, sinking deep and staying there, echoing in his thoughts long after his body recovered. When Karim finally stood again, he returned to the village as the same man, yet not the same. Each morning, the familiar urge to rush out and fix the world rose within him. But now it was met with a new voice, one that asked whether he had eaten, rested, or listened to his own needs first. For the first time in his life, Karim made a choice that felt strange, even frightening. He chose himself. He repaired his home piece by piece, mending the roof that had leaked for years, strengthening the walls that had cracked under time, and cleaning the floors that had waited patiently for care. He rested when his body asked for rest, ate meals without guilt, and allowed himself moments of stillness by the river where the water flowed without urgency and the sunset painted the sky in colors he had never truly noticed before. The river taught him something powerful, that movement did not always mean effort, and that stillness was not laziness, but renewal. When people came asking for help, Karim no longer abandoned himself to say yes. Sometimes he helped, sometimes he asked them to wait, and sometimes he gently declined, explaining that he needed time. Whispers followed at first, confusion and quiet disappointment, but something remarkable began to happen. Kareem's kindness became steadier instead of frantic, his presence stronger instead of drained, and his smile real, no longer borrowed from exhaustion. Slowly, the village learned from him, understanding that love does not mean emptying yourself until nothing remains, and that caring for others works best when it grows from a full, rested heart. People began fixing their own homes, resting without shame, and helping one another without destroying themselves in the process. And as Kareem sat by the river one quiet evening, watching the light fade and the water move endlessly forward, he finally understood the lesson his suffering had taught him. Loving yourself first is not selfish, not weak, and not wrong. It is the beginning of real, lasting compassion, because the world does not need your pain or your burnout. It needs your wholeness, your balance, and the light that only someone who has learned to care for themselves can truly give.